All right, so here we have the image widget editor, right? That allows us, presumably allows us to just copy and paste, right, a URL that we find on the web, or it allows us to upload the image. And once we upload the image, it would set the URL attribute from the image we just uploaded, right? And I just showed you how to calculate that URL, right? The third enhancement that we're going to do here is we're going to add a button here that would allow us to search for an image in a third-party using a third-party API. All right, so let's do that. Let's add here a button that would allow us to navigate to a search page. Okay, so let's. Am I recording? Yes. All right, so let's go back to our editor, widget editor, and there's our form. And so let's add here a hyperlink that is going to allow us to navigate to a image search. Okay, so something like, I don't know, so widget, the ID of the widget, widget ID, and this is search, right? So search. So this is going to navigate us to a different page. Okay. Now the URLs that I'm putting here, right, might not match exactly what the assignment asks you to do. So you'll need to refactor this to match exactly what the assignment asks you. Okay. This is me cheating because I don't have the entire assignment already built. Right. I'm just showing you how to implement that. You'll need to integrate it. All right. So we just added that new button, maybe. Oh, there it is. Search doesn't look like a button. Let's paint it as a button. So this will be class btn info. Okay, and maybe put btn block. All right. So if I click on that, it's not going anywhere just yet. Right. Instead, let's see. Let's go to 321, right? The presumably the ID of the widget I'm currently manipulating, right? Right. So let's map it to a new page that doesn't exist. Let's map it to a view. So we'll need to go to the config file, right, and create a brand new route that's going to go to search, right? So yeah, widget 321 search matches this route, and I'm gonna maybe call it. I think we tell you how to call it. Do we? Let me see. Flickr. We call it this one. We call it widget flickr search view something or other. Right. So let's give it that name, which doesn't exist. So let me create it. Let's go to views, widget, template. And let me create that brand new page. There it is. Okay. We don't want a full-blown HTML document. Instead, what we want is something that looks like this. At the bottom, we ask you to do something like this, right? Where you navigate to the search, you type in some topic or some title, right? And then it goes off to Flickr, and it comes back with images that match your criteria. Okay, and then you should be able to click on one of these images, and then from that click, you should be able to select, what is the URL of that image, the actual URL, public URL of that image. You'll grab that URL, and that's the URL you're going to put in the widget.url attribute. Make sense? Right? That's the assignment. So let's do that. We gave you some start code to do that. This is what we're going to do. This is what we're going to put in here. Okay, it's going to be an input group that has a search text, right? It's going to be a form control, and then it's going to have a button that we're going to click that is going to search for that image. Okay, there it is. Right. So if we refresh. Right, and we click on this, we are in that page. Yeah, we are in that view. Yes. Yep. Right. So yeah. So this should be user ID something something slash right all the way down to widget ID and then search. Okay. Yep. You could argue that you don't need all that context, right? Since, for instance, when you go to a widget, the way it's implemented now is that each widget knows who their parent is, right? So for instance, the only reason to have that context, right, is that is if you are at the level of a child or at some branch or some leaf, right, in the tree, in the hierarchical tree, you want to be able to backtrack and come back to your parents, you know, and so the only way to do that is to encode it in the URL, right? But the way we implemented it is that each widget actually knows who the ID of their parent is, right? Each widget knows who their page is, correct? Right? And if you so you should be able to navigate to the parent page, knowing that ID. And once you are at the page, you know the ID of the parent website. So you should be able to navigate to the parent website. So there's no real reason to keep track of the entire context, right? But if you need to do things such as a breadcrumb, where you want to be able to jump around, right, anywhere, then you need the context, right? You need to be able to carry that context with you so that you can randomly jump anywhere you want, right? So again, it depends. It all depends on the use cases that you're implementing, whether you need all that context or not, right? But it's generally a good practice to be able to have it encoded in the URL, enough context that allows you to navigate anywhere you want from wherever in that data space. Make sense? Right? I don't need it because again, I'm somewhat cheating a little bit, right? I don't have any of that context because I'm not implementing navigating back, navigating to my parent, anything like that. Okay. All right. So okay. So we navigated here. I'm just going to add here a container fluid because I don't have any margins, and it looks weird. All right, I have the margins. I have those margins. And so I should be able to click here, and the controller should be able to use a service to be able to search for this, okay? For those in Flickr. All right, so we don't have a control, so let's create a controller that has this event handler, right? So the event handler, when I click on this button, is going to pass the search text whatever text I type in there, okay? So let's create a controller for that. So let's see, and it's a Flickr search view client. So that means that I'm going to need a controller of a similar name, or I can just copy this and rename it something really quick, Flickr. Not that you would ever do this, right? And I'm going to call it the Flickr controller, Flickr controller. Implemented in a similar function of the same name. I don't need SE, and I don't need any of this. Okay, so I have my controller, and before I forget, I'm going to include it here. So this will be script, src, views, widget, controllers, the Flickr controller. There we go. Okay, so we loaded that Flickr controller. And it needs to listen for the incoming search photos method. Yes, an event handler, so let's do that. So we'll say that model.searchPhotos is implemented down here, and it takes the search text. And for now, we're just going to say console log search text. Okay? And I think the only last piece is that we need to tie this controller to that template. Right? So let's go back to our config, and we're going to say that this template, the controller for that template, controller is that Flickr controller, and I'm going to refer it to it from within the template as model, I believe. Is that how I rename it? How do I use it? Yes, model. Everybody okay? Everybody still with me? Right? There's not much there. There's nothing new here. So let's try this out, and it broke. What do we do? This is syntax, unexpected identifier in config. Let's go back to config. We must have mistyped something. Okay, we're missing a comma here. Try it again. Right, so whatever we type here and we click on this, all right, so the controller is receiving the our search text, yes? Now we're going to use a service to actually go out to Flickr to do this, right? So to do that, presumably, we're going to use a service which doesn't exist yet. There will be a Flickr service, and we're going to use that service to search, right? And I believe we give you that start code as well. Let's see. Here's the controller. There it is. It's some function that's going to use the Flickr service to search the photos. But it's going to call search for photos, and it's going to pass the search term or search text. Now it's going to pass that search term over to the Flickr service, who's actually going to connect to Flickr to do this. Everybody okay? All right. It's going to come back with a response. Notice that presumably the service is not unwrapping the information for me. So I'm doing it here in the controller. Bad design, but that's okay. And it's going to massage the data when it comes back from the service. Okay. We're going to console log the response just to see what's in there. Actually, the data. We only care about the data. After we massage it a little bit, which I'll show you in a minute what we're doing, right? We take those photos and we send them over to the template for rendering. Okay, right? So the template needs to be ready to render this, right? Model photos. For now, let's go to the template and let's just put it here. Let's put the raw JSON that is coming back from the server, just the raw JSON. All right? Then we'll decide how to render it. Okay? All right. So let's focus a little bit on implementing the search photos. All right? So let's do that. We'll need a service. Let's create a service. So under services, I'm going to just grab and copy one of these, and this is going to be my flickr service. There it is. And it's going to be called, I don't need any of this, let's see. It's going to be called flickr service. There it is. And it's going to use HTTP, but everything else I don't need. Okay? Now the implementation of this service, I believe we give you a start code for that as well, somewhere here. Yes. No, actually, no, we don't. Where is it? Yeah, we do. Here we go. Okay, so this is a start code. Careful, because when you copy it, there's going to be some white spaces. Notice I have a space here that shouldn't be there. We'll move that. And also I have these dots that I don't need anymore. Let's see, there's a function that searches the photos. Well, let's see what else. Anything else broke? Okay, let's talk about this a little bit. Okay, let's see. So this is going to be the service call that the controller wants to call, right? This search photos on the Flickr service. Yes, right. So let's expose that API. This .search photos is pointing to the function down here, right? So this is a function that is actually going to talk to Flickr, right? So to talk to Flickr, you need to ask Flickr for an API key. Right? You need to ask Flickr for permission to use their API. You just apply for it. I did, and these are my my key and my secret. Right? Don't use them. So I'm going to copy my key. Right, so if you go to Flickr Services Apps, right, you can apply for a key. They're pretty fast at giving you these over here. You do need to register and say what it's for. You can say it's for educational purposes, and we're learning how to use mean and whatnot. Okay, so we'll copy those two. There it is. And then they have an API. They have an API that it's being hosted at api.flickr.com. Services REST. They say it's REST, but it's not really REST. Okay, it doesn't behave like the RESTful APIs that we've come to love. Instead, the way they work is that you go to this URL and then you provide one of many methods of what it is that you want to do. Right? In our case, we want to search for a photo using a term. Okay, but there's tons of things that you can do. Right? You can follow somebody in Flickr. You can see who's following you. You can see their photos. You can look at a particular album. You can add photos to an album. I mean, it's a very extensive API that you can work with Flickr. You can also so you list here the actual method or invocation that you want to do here. Right now we want to search photos. Right. You can also configure the format that you want it, the response format that you want. Okay. You can choose XML, JSON. There's a whole bunch of formats that are supported. And you need to provide the API key as part of the URL and a search term. Okay, make sense? Right. There's tons of other things that you can configure. Right. The genre, what colors you want, dates, file size, resolution. There's tons of things that GPS location. There's quite extensive API, very very powerful. So anyway, we calculate the URL base, right? That's the URL request. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to replace the API key and the text. I'm going to replace them with my key and my text, the search term. Yes, I'm going to replace that. So there's the URL. I'm going to replace it with the API key. And I'm going to replace text with my search term. And then I'm just going to hit it with http.get URL. See that? We've been using HTTP GET to hit our services running on our servers. But it works just as well to hit anything on the web. Okay? Especially though if those URLs support either CORS or support JSON-P. Okay? This one supports JSON-P. Right? And I'll show you in a minute what it returns. Okay? Because normally the browser would stop me from doing this. Normally the browser, for security purposes, the default behavior is that a browser will not let you go out of your domain. Okay? If it downloads a JavaScript from a domain, right, the browser will check that any network that emanates from that JavaScript, right, that it only goes back to the original domain that it came from. Right? Normally, it's not allowed to go out to other domains, right? Which is it's secure, but it's very inconvenient when it comes to using these services. Yes. Well, originally, when this was starting to come up, right? And a lot of folks were looking to enhance the web pages when you were downloaded. ASP.NET was trying to do it. Java applets were trying to do it. JavaScript, right? And people were very worried that, said, wait a minute, this is code that somebody else wrote, right? I'm downloading it onto my machine, right? And, well, what can that, what kind of security risks do I have, right? Can it read my file system? Can it format my drive? Can it store? Can it listen to me? My camera? Well, there were no cameras back then, but there was a whole bunch of security risks. Could it listen to my key tabs as I type? So there were a lot of issues on saying on trying to advertise. It says no, it's secure. We have it boxed into this nice little secure browser. We won't let it access your file system. We won't let it do this, that, and the other. One of the things was we won't even let it do a network connection to anything outside its original domain. Presumably, if you visit a particular domain, you trust that domain, right? So anything that's downloaded from there, you have an implicit trust having visited that particular domain. So, okay, we're going to let it go back to its original domain, but presumably we don't want it to go out and maybe inject ourselves, right, from one domain, and you think you're talking to one domain, but you're actually sending information to another domain, right, a clandestine domain, right? So the browsers by default would stop you from doing that. Okay. Now there's a workaround. There's a hack around that security issue, which is it's an accepted hack that fools the browser into thinking that this is not a network connection that is asking for data, right? Notice that the browser has no problem of downloading images, right, or CSS or HTML from anywhere on the file on the network, right? Right? Your browser downloads your HTML, but then it goes off and downloads a JavaScript from Angular. It downloads Bootstrap from Bootstrap. So the browser doesn't have an issue with downloading resources from different domains, right? What it has an issue is you programmatically, right, following some logic that you encoded, right, it generating network connections back, right? So that's the problem, right? So you have written some code that is running on your browser, right, and it's doing so the browser has no problems downloading static content, right, from different pieces on the network. It has a problem with having executables connected to anywhere in the network. So one of the hacks is to use JSON-P, right? And I'll show you what JSON-P does in a second. All right, so we did that. Let's go back and refresh. Let me close that. Let me refresh that, and let's Flickr controller. I think we're using a service, but we never loaded the service. So let's load the service in index, and we'll load it right here. So this will be script, source, services, and we have the Flickr service. There it is. Oops. Let's try it again. No, still. What is it saying? Flickr service. Undefined Flickr service. Did I misspell it? Here's a Flickr service. Flickr service. Flickr, is that, I called it right? Flickr. So the controller, did I spell it right in the controller? Flickr service. Paste, so that looks right. I'm sorry? Well, here I called it lowercase. So factory, I use service here. I use the service design pattern instead of the factory. Let's try it again. Okay, there we go. All right. Okay, so let's call something, and we'll call for Lego. And it didn't work. Oh, actually it did. Okay, so we have some data from the server, from Flickr. It took just a couple of seconds, but let me show you what the request did. So here's the request. So here's the this is the request that went out. Right, here's the URL, the query parameters that went out. And this is what comes back from the server. Look what comes back from the server. See that? Notice that from here on is JSON. See that? That's what we were expecting, just JSON data. Right? That's what we're returning from our services, is it not? Okay, but notice that it prepends it with this weird something or other. Right? It looks like a function. See that? It looks like a function. And in the JavaScript, look at the response headers. Look at the response headers. It's downloading it as not application/JSON, right? It's downloading it as text/JavaScript. So this is so the server is fooling the browser into thinking, right, that this is not JSON at all. Okay, this is just any other script. It thinks it's a file. The browser thinks that this is a file. See that? It thinks it's a file, and the browser has no problem downloading a JavaScript file from anywhere on the network. It doesn't violate the security measures, right? And that is the accepted hack, right, that we call JSON-P. P for padding, meaning we have the original JSON, but we pad it with a function call, and we change and the server, which is colluding with us, in this hack. It changes the content type to a text JavaScript. So the browser says, "Oh, you're not violating anything. You're just downloading a simple JavaScript file, right?" What we need to do for this to work, presumably, is that what happens when a JavaScript file gets downloaded? It gets executed immediately, right? So what this is going to try and do when it gets downloaded, it's going to look for a function called JSON flickr API, which we don't have. Okay? If we had that function, what this would do, it would call that function, and it would pass us the JSON data. See that? All right? So that's what the hack does. Okay? Now, one of the problems with the API is that it forces us to call our functions JSON flickr API, which is a little bit inconvenient that we have to actually have a function of that name, right? What I did is that in the service, where's the service? That is the service. Here's a get URL, right? Here's a get URL. So in the controller, I'm sending it to the controller. So in the controller, here's a response. Here's the raw response, which I printed. I am going to remove, right, the beginning of that function call because I only want the JSON, right? Only the JSON. So I remove that. I remove this first part, and I also remove the very last parentheses for the function call. See that? So I remove, I do a substring. I don't want that last parentheses. And that is our JSON, which is now represented as plain old string. It's a string. Okay? We need to parse it. We parse it into JSON. Right? JSON is a object that all browsers support, right? That allow you to do both ways. You could take a string and you can parse it into JSON, or the vice versa. You can take JSON objects and you can stringify it and convert it into a string, right? And now I have the actual data. Yes? Yes, exactly. You would only do that if you actually trust that API, right? You're by us, deciding that URL, right, is that, hey, we understand each other, right? I trust this API, and I'm going to call it. And I'm assuming that's not going to send me garbage or trying to do something bad to my system, right? That's not going to try and listen to me or whatever, right? So yeah, so we are colluding with on both ends of using this workaround. So it's a very common thing to do. More and more APIs have been coming out that are exposing just data on the web, right? And folks have been becoming more and more okay with just allowing data to be accessed from their servers, right? So so if they both agree, right? If the client and the server agree to use this workaround, then there is no security issue, right? We both agree, and most popular websites will provide a JSON-P workaround. The more modern solution, right, is not to use this workaround at all. Right? It's to use a newer technology called CORS. Right? CORS, cross-origin request something. I forget what it stands for. Look it up real quick. Cross-origin resource sharing. Okay, this is a newer technology that most servers like Tomcat, I think 7 and on, right, support this new feature that you can configure a server to say, hey, if you get requests from these domains, go ahead. I trust them, right? So just provide the data, right? So the newer browsers, what they'll do is first, if they're trying to do a network access, right? If they see a JavaScript trying to do a network connection, what they'll do is call a pre-flight, right? They'll do a query to the server and say, hey server, do you support CORS? And the server will respond, oh yeah, sure, I support CORS. Okay, well, now there's a request from this domain. Do you trust this domain? And the server will respond, yes, I trust that particular domain, or no, I don't support that particular domain. Or what most Google APIs do, I support requests from anybody. Right? I don't care. You can, you know, Google Maps, right? All their Google Plus and all their services are open to anybody, right? You can just hit them and ask them for data. All their search engines, right? All their search support for images, for whatever, right? You can just query and just integrate all their services into your So the newer technology is to use CORS, right? And with the understanding that it has become very common that you have all these endpoints sharing lots and lots of data that we trust, you know, we trust Google and do no evil. That it's going to give us data that you know they're making money out of it, right? So if it's free, then somehow we are the product, right? Somehow they're making some money from out of our searches, and they're trusting for you know, they want to lower the barriers as much as possible for us to integrate with their services. Make sense? All right. So anyway, so this worked. It went out to the server and it retrieved the photos, and we spit them out into with a raw JSON over here, with the raw JSON. Now notice these objects are not actually URLs. See this? They're not actual URLs. Instead, each image is represented by an object. Each image is represented by an object. Okay, what Flickr does is that, you know, since they have huge traffic of sharing tons and, you know, bazillions of images, right? They have a particular scheme of how they break up all their images across their network, on how they share it, how they cache it, how they replicate it across many networks and geographically across the world. So they have, you know, farms of these servers, and so what they come back with is an object, right, that allows you to reconstruct the URL of where the image actually lives, right? Okay, so it tells you what the farm is, what the server is, the owner, the ID, a whole bunch of things, right? Secrets, right? Also to be able to make sure that this search, they have a full control of the access to this image, right? So they can tag it and see the, you know, statistics about, you know, how many times we've accessed that particular image. Anyway, we need to reconstruct that image. To reconstruct that image, we gave you some code here to do just that. There it is. Let's grab that and let's copy it into the template, our templates. So instead of this raw object, I'm going to paste this here and make sure that I don't break these. Let's see. And if we go back and refresh and do Lego again, we have images. Okay. So these images are built, right? If we look at them and we inspect them, right? It's this URL. So HTTP, farm file, static, Flickr, 42 something something something. This we need to build that. We need to build that, and the Flickr documentation shows you how to build that URL. But let me just show you real quick. It's farm, then followed by the farm the farm name, farm number, then photo.server, then photo.id underscore secret underscore s. The very last one tells you what size you want the image. Now you can have the original image, which might be fairly big. Do you want a rectangular? Do you want a square? Do you want a thumbnail? Do you want, you know, what is it that you're using it for, right? You can provide all sorts of manipulation on that image. Make sense? Right? And I invite you to you know, read over the Flickr documentation, right, to know exactly how to implement that. Everybody okay? Right? Now the click, the ng click select photo. This would live also on the controller for this, right? So this would be here model.selectPhoto, and it would pass along the photo object. So function select photo. So here's the photo. So this would be console.log.photo. So if we do that and we search, we go to console and do Lego. And let's clear that. So if I click on this, notice I have the original object, right? Whatever I click, and I can use the information in that photo to, following this pattern, I can recreate the original URL. Once you have the URL, it's as simple as making the widgets.url equal to that URL, and then you save it back. Make sense? All right, I think you have enough to work on that widget edit. All right.